Welcome to the fourth round of the Tuesday night marathon, live here at the Mechanics Institute Chess Club in San Francisco. And tonight we have a few topics. Our Sinkfeld Cup that had some fighting games, but lots of draws there in St. Louis. And then all the action of last week's Tuesday night marathon. Lots of exciting games here too, if not quite the same level as St. Louis. But we'll start out today with a tribute to Pal Benko, who died 2 days ago. He was born in 1928, so he lived to 91 years old. Good old age. I remember the first time I played on the U.S. Olympic team, Pal Benko was the captain there. And he had played in the candidates tournament in the 1950s. And he was famous for having qualified for the interzonal in 1970. But then there was somebody who needed a spot then who hadn't qualified, whose name was Bobby Fischer. And Pal Benko said, "You can have my spot. You know, I think you might go somewhere with this." And Fischer went on to win the interzonal, the three candidates matches, and then beat Spassky in the 72 World Championship match. But none of that could have happened without Pal Benko giving up his spot. Well, one thing about Benko, he was he's Hungarian, born in France when his parents were on a holiday. But then after World War II, there he was in Hungary, and it was communist, and he wanted to escape in 1952. So he was in Berlin, and well, you know, of course it's very frightening trying to escape. And he told me personally that he's then running, you know, looking, and then running, looking back, seeing, you know, who's after him and such, and ran and hit his head into a pole and knocked himself out. And so they caught him, saw him escaping, and then they put him in a prison camp for over a year there. So it was quite unpleasant, but then later on he was able to get out, and some years later he was able to travel to Iceland when then he defected and came to the United States. But you probably all remember Benko's bafflers, his puzzles, the Benko Gambit. I don't know if anybody here plays the Benko Gambit.
How do you pronounce his first name?
Pal. I'm going to show you one of his games. He had a very entertaining game from 1968. His great years were the 50s and 60s. And this is a game where he had white against I.A. Horowitz. What are those initials stand for? Israel Albert, yes, Horowitz, who used to edit Chess Life, if anybody remembers the old days there. So Benko had white. They start out with what could be a Slav defense, but Benko liked things a little unusual, and played a kind of ready Larsen opening. Bianchero. So Horowitz plays very solidly. And both sides castle. And you see this from here. Especially want you to be able to see this, Craig. You know, this. Okay, just development towards the center, the way Reddy had always said, you don't have to you don't have to occupy the center, you just try to control it. And A5 is a pretty good move to take some space there. Pawn to C5. Now he's moved that pawn twice, so white gets a little advantage in the opening. He plays it like it's a Tarrasch defense, trying to give black an isolated pawn there. Okay, knight a6, knight c3, bishop f5, and Benko jumps in the center with knight e5. So he's got some in, just all his pieces are aiming towards it. Horowitz takes on d4, queen takes, and then knight c5, hitting that soft spot on b3 where you get a fork. And if you have to retreat with queen d1, then black's doing really quite well here. But here starts the action. You always look, can I do what I want to do? I know my opponent's trying to do something to me, but can I do something to him? And Benko takes that pawn in the center. So Horowitz says, well, okay, I'll do my fork and show me what you've got. Knight's attacking the queen, so you've got to do something, either take one of them with check, but Benko moves the queen to f5. Okay, threatening the bishop. So well, you can take the rook or the troublesome knight, and I think Horowitz is correct to take the knight in the center. So Benko takes the bishop. And right now, pawns are even, material's all even, but if white could get in rook to d1, he'd just have a super game. So Horowitz takes the rook. Yeah, and we capture an exchange. You'll be an exchange down. Anyone want to guess Benko's move? Rook d1 would win that knight. That would be, yeah. Although I might, rook d1, I might counter with queen to b6. On the bishop. Bishop to d4, maybe queen to e.
d5 threatens f7 3 times. Or bishop to
That'll be quite complicated. Bishop takes, queen takes. Yeah, that's quite interesting. You will be down a whole rook, but have attacking chances. Rook d1 is sensible. He played knight takes f7. Kind of a surprising move there. Just leaving the knight, giving up a second knight. But then you start to look at it and say, oh yes, there are really some troubles here for the black side. I mean, the knight's also threatening the queen, kind of, although the rook takes queen. But if you play the obvious move, rook takes, bishop takes knight, pinning that rook, you're still on this one. White's going to win this game. But Horowitz sat and looked, and he was thinking of what he can do. Fine, we don't want to move this knight out and lose that. Well, he didn't play this. What if he had just moved the knight off to knight c7? You take my queen, I'll take your queen. And I am right now a rook ahead. Threatening rook takes knight. What is that? No, no, if I take your queen, you will take my queen with the rook. And you will be ahead material. You could go knight h6 check, and I'll go pawn takes knight. That's I've got the d5 squared covered, so you don't have that check. Yeah, if you go queen check, I'll put my bishop here. You can win that bishop. Yeah. It's like it's a maybe. Actually, when I first looked at this, I said, that's a tough defense, but there's a real knockout blow here. What is that? Queen to e5 or something. I could g5, threatening checkmate. I'll take the knight to the. Queen takes x. All right, if Mike says we have to look at queen takes f7, we have to look at it. But I'll take it. Bishop check. Knight h6 check, I would take that too.
No, not right now, back before you did all the other.
That was the move we just looked at before.
Starting out with bishop take g7.
Bishop takes g7. You could do that. I think I would play rook takes the knight as being the most dangerous attacker now, trying to get the bishop and the queen.
Can we go back to the original position?
Yes, yes. Okay, take one moment and, because Benko had to see this, this is surely a defense to look at. One move just makes.
The knight is on D5.
The knight was on d5, and he played a different defense, but I'm asking, if he had played that defense, which Benko had to consider, how would you knock him out here?
Well, queen e5.
Queen e5, rook takes the knight. Go ahead. So I'll go back to what I always say with the Morphy games. Use all your attackers. And who aren't you using here? True, you're not using your rook. That one I can't help. Ah, thank you. If you do that one, that one's the end.
The knight check if you try to do
Yeah, if he takes the knight, you go check, king, and queen h8 checkmate. So the only other defense is, well, as you know, g6 would be. Yeah, that one's that's a nice mate. And anything like bishop to f6. Mate in 2. Knight h6 check, yes. And you take it, you don't take it. Queen h7 is checkmate. So very, very elegant of Benko. Horowitz tried instead queen to c8, but
So he saw the knight move didn't work. Yeah.
I guess he saw the knight move didn't work, tried something else. I'll let you guys finish the attack. It's very nice. You're down one rook. So, I mean, okay, you could kind of take and take, but, oh, well, we want to just finish it, checkmate him.
Knight
Knight
h6?
h6 check. And if they take the knight, then, well, bishop takes d5 check is splat, the two diagonals. So he did play knight h6 check, and Horowitz went king to h8. Now, I know you guys have seen the coming mate.
Bishop D4.
Well, actually, then king would take on g7.
Oh, I get it.
Queen takes d5, which did,
Oh, okay.
okay,
Yeah.
giving it away, yes.
Smothered.
I mean, there's really nothing you can do. It's, I mean, so you can't just be down material. So whatever you do, he actually played that move, and
Smothered me.
yes, the queen to g8 check, and and Horowitz just resigned rather than allowing him to mate. But that's a nice game for your legacy.
Yeah, very nice.
When Tony comes back from Montreal, I'm sure he's going to have some of the Benko puzzles to show you and put you in the newsletter. So we'll have a bit of Benko time. So that was all Paul. And now we move on to our two main events, which I'm going to compare the two this week. Usually I show you just games or positions from one of the top tournaments in the world and then get to our games, but I think I'll go back and forth a bit because there are some things that are similar and some things we do a little better than they do. Yes, yes. Well, and actually I'm thinking courage. It's okay. So the first game I'll show is from the Sinkfeld Cup, and just to show you the standings now, they played 10 of the 11 rounds in the Sinkfeld Cup, and in the lead is Dinglerin with 6 out of 10. 2 wins, the rest draws. There's 4 people, half a point back: Anand, Karyakin, Carlsen, and Nepomniachtchi. And then, such a strong field: Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, Mamedyarov, and Caruana on an even score. Half a point behind Nakamura and Giri, and then half a point behind that, Aronian and Wesley So. They've had about 4 rounds in this tournament where all the games were drawn. And they're great players.
They weren't boring draws, though. Some of them were quite exciting games that had potential wins on the board at various points.
Yes, I mean, they are trying, they're fighting, but something's just a little lacking that, well, one, Magnus is not having his normal tournament. He's also a little cautious, maybe feeling not quite in form and not wanting.
Tilt from the rapid.
Could be that tilt from the rapid, that he doesn't want to stop his losing streak. He's got a non-losing streak of 85 games. Yeah, just a little off form. Some of the other players, Nakamura, he's just not the player he used to be. He's -1. He really hasn't had chances to win, and he's instead of all the exciting games he used to play 15 years ago, they're kind of cautious games. But there's one player I want to talk about in particular, and that's Vishy Anand. And he should be just far ahead in this tournament. He's had 4 or 5 winning positions and not put the guys away. And this game was round 7 against Dinglerin, where Anand had black. And we'll go kind of quickly through the opening. It's rather sort of Catalan Bogo Indian, which is all very safe. And Anand plays very classical chess. Castles, castles. So yeah, this is a closed Catalan they've gotten into. Both sides take squares. Ding is trying for a little advantage. But he can't really go e4 in this position. So he does a knight maneuver. Anand's just ready, and this is a very classic setup for the black pieces. Knight's ready, bishop out, rook on e8. And at this point, Anand breaks with pawn to e5. Some danger of getting an isolated pawn, but all the black pieces are coming out. And this is actually very nice timing. I think Ding should probably take on e5, but he took on d5, and Anand just pushed the pawn to e4, which now if the pawn takes on c6, the pawn takes on d3, threatening the queen. So Ding had to move, and Anand was able to capture in the center, and he's got this very strong center pawns here that take some space. So he's already just a tad better against Ding. Ding attacks the bishop. Anand retreats, and rook to c1. This also looks quite nice for white, that the knight's coming to c7. But Anand has a nice move here. Rook a6, and his idea is to come here and take the c file. So maybe Ding should try something else. This bishop h3 seeks to put pressure on the knights there. But Anand covers a lot of squares. Queen moves. And knight to b6 is an excellent move from Anand. So this probably is wrong from Ding. He grabs the pawn on a5. And here, Anand takes the bishop on h3, which the knight can take it back. But anyone want to give me black's move here? Okay, very good. Queen c8. Attack on the c file, but even worse. For instance, if you take this, well, I'll take on the knight. You can take my knight, but then I'm going to take this knight down here, threatening your knight, but also threatening knight to g4 to checkmate you. So this queen to c8 wins material. And with that move, Ding is on the run. He had to guard his knight, but then loses the exchange down here. Anand takes a rook, takes back, takes back. Ding takes the knight on b6. And let's, wow, this move I hope you would play. You've got, he's got a knight and pawn for the rook, but you should seek the attack. So pawn to e3, I hope would be a natural move for you, trying to break up things around the king. Ding went pawn to f3, trying to hold it together. And another nice move from Anand, pawn to h5, which, in case you need to get rid of back-ranked mates. But his idea, Ding moves the bishop back to here. His idea is break up the king side. Okay, that, you know, bishop and queen, this is kind of a target. So Ding takes. And what impressed me so much about this game is this is like the Anand of old, 15 years ago. He was really sharp, incisive. His games had a lot of power, and you know, that's why he was, you know, 5-time world champion. So,
Ding is saying, show me when he took the pawn.
well, no, I think Ding is saying, what else can I do? But this is what's happened to Anand throughout this tournament. He has just gotten winning positions, you know, against Caruana, against Ding, against Wesley So, I believe it was, Nepomniachtchi, and then he hesitates. He just, okay, you know, make sure he doesn't lose or something. But how about you guys? Can you finish off Ding here?
94?
You said that so quickly. I like that. Just charge in ahead. There is a question whether it works or not.
First, ask
Or
questions
is it a
later.
human move as well?
What's that?
Is it a computer move or no? Is it possible that human can also find it?
I think Anand in the old days would have found that very easily. One should look at this move because it does a lot. Well, we'll take a look at this position, sort of see what's going on. You've got a bishop looking this way, you've got a rook, you've got a knight. This pawn is an attacker. And your queen is lurking around the back here.
Just needs some leverage to get the queen in the game.
You need that. And also look at these black pieces. They're over here. So you need to look for the attack. If you're going to win the game, yeah, an attack against the king.
None didn't play this?
No, he didn't. Now, you guys would have, or some of you at least, and you would have said, all right. Well, one thing about this move is you have this monster threat. If the knight comes down here, you know, with the queen checkmating and all, and you take this knight and the pawn takes, you're going to get another queen. That's just over. So
So he pretty much has to accept.
you have to accept. And sorry, what move? Yes, if that's your idea, rook takes, and then you have to say, does this feel like this is a winning attack?
What's it's going to be very hard to prevent rook g4. That looks like the end of days.
Okay, well, so how many of you would feel confident about the attack here?
Queen is C1.
It's on c1.
I mean C8.
No. That's from
Okay.
G4, king F3.
I mean, instead of moving the rook, you have to.
That's a cute route, actually. I don't see why.
Well, tell you what, I'm going to try some defenses there. Anand certainly saw this, and I'm a little surprised because I would have thought he'd say, oh, you know, just gets, you know, your red blood cells flowing, you know, bishop, rook, knight, queen, and can you tell me what the threat is to start with?
Rook g4.
Rook g4,
King f3.
king f3,
King f1. King takes rook. Queen g2.
say king takes, check. It doesn't really matter.
Six and ten.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, some checkmate.
That's right.
So you have really heavy threats. You have, and we'll try some defenses. For instance, how about queen takes the pawn? So is that going to do it?
That was your queen. Rook G4 check, queen H1 check.
Queen H1 check, yeah,
Queen H1,
take the queen.
take the queen, game over. Okay, that's all right. And these guys aren't. Well, I could give the bishop back, but then I'm absolutely hopelessly lost. How about knight to G5? Yeah, this one's a little trickier here.
How about rook takes H4?
Yes, I think you could try both. Rook takes H4. This rook takes is a deadly threat. Could we try pawn to H3? Little hard getting through here. Maybe if we
Okay, so if we do H2 then instead.
you want bishop takes H2 here. Aha! What a move. Queen G1 check looks terrible. If we take the bishop. Okay, I don't know if this. Rook G4. Knight to H3. Well, not sure you're not right still. Queen F1 threatening checkmate. He's got to go queen takes D5. We can take the pawn check.
Queen F1 check and then E2 or whatever it is. Maybe switch the pawn.
Could. The bishop will be able to sacrifice for it. That's Now, I suppose it's not all that easy for a human. The computer has, it is +5 for black. And this is, so, I mean, any defense isn't going to work. If we tried the blunt, oh no, this was knight G5.
What about rook G4?
Rook G4, queen F3,
And then queen G1?
queen G1 threatening, queen G2 checkmate, threatening rook F4 checkmate,
Actually, it's threatening rook G3.
threatening rook G3 checkmate. Yeah, this one looks better. This, I think you've got him here.
Actually, he's right. You could play queen G3 maybe. If your pawn takes rook takes, it's still a maybe. You can't play that.
with this threat, okay. Okay. So, all right, now that we've gone through it, probably you'd say you'd try it, but how many of you would, if you get this position in the Tuesday night marathon tonight, how many of you will like throw your knight there and the... See, that's what I thought, you know? People are courageous in this club, and you just go for it, and that's why the games are so interesting here. Yes, you do, and some sound ones, too. I think I'll show you some of these, the moves that he did. He just hesitated. He's up the exchange. I don't know, didn't, so he sort of came back, queen to c6, which has to feel a bit wrong. And then this next move, Ding is a great defender. So you would expect this. Bishop to e1, and this bishop is going to e3. And already you probably feel like, oh, I've kind of missed my best shot there. So it's still better because you're the exchange up, but it went knight to h5, bishop g3, and well, he even traded into an endgame. Takes, pawn takes. Ending is very complicated, but it's 2, 4, 6, 7, 2, 4, 5. White is worse, but not that much worse. And there are chances to win, but Anand hesitated a little more in the endgame, and it was just drawn, especially against such resolute defense from Ding. So I won't show you the rest of this. You can see it online. But 2 or 3 other positions Anand, he was up clearly enough to win and didn't reel in the point. So let's take one of our games now. One pawn here. Okay, let's take Jivan Karamseti against Ethan Boldy. Starts out at a French defense. Advanced variation. And bishop to d3. That's often intending to sacrifice a pawn. So queen b6. And Jivan says, okay, you can take that pawn on d4. So Ethan takes once and then hesitates. But you should really just take it. He instead plays a little conservatively with rook to c8. And then Jivan went back with bishop to e2. So Ethan goes pawn to f6, attacking the pawn center. And develop. Pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, pawn to a6, covering the b5 square. But black has been a little slow in development here. Bishop e3, very courageous. This taking the b pawn looks dangerous. Again, he could try it. Queen c7, rook c1, queen b8, So white's got everything developed, but what do you do?
Bishop B6, pin it down.
Could do that. That's quite a move. I like his move though. He does knight A4, trying to get a knight on that position. And at this point, Ethan decides, well, I'm finally going to be brave and just grab that pawn. Probably just should have done it earlier, but he takes the pawn on E5. Rook takes C8, check. Bishop takes. And knight takes E5, queen takes E5, knight to B6. So that knight is now very powerful on this B6 square. But the queen gets out of the way, comes to C7, and guards the bishop. Queen C1, you can do that, and they trade queens, move the bishop here. That's probably better for white. Yeah, some edge in the endgame. So Jivan, though, he felt inspired. Queen to D4, trying to get all his pieces into play. And rook to C1 is coming, which is a problem. But Ethan finds an idea. Knight E7, rook C1, and knight C6, closing down the C file, and the knight's on the queen. But I thought you might like to have this position. Okay, everybody does that. Let's go after him and check all these white pieces are in action now. Yeah, pawn to G6, you're going to lose the rook on H8.
G5's coming, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of trouble here. So king D8, and you've already said bishop to G5. So this is real. Yes. So bishop had to come to E7. Queen takes G7, and yeah, it's hard to guard that rook. So it's probably lost for Ethan, but he decides, all right, he'll play the exchange down. Queen takes knight. I like that. You're not tempted just to take a rook with check.
Oh, the knight. Oh, no, that's why knight takes.
Very nice. Rook takes knight. When you see a good move, look for a better move. That's threatening the queen, threatening checkmate as well as the rook, and that one really hurts. Well, not much to be done. Ethan takes the bishop on G5. And here he did get very greedy. Didn't take the queen. Now he takes the rook with check. And king E7. Doesn't take the queen again. Checks to put him in the back rank. King to D8. What? Thank you. Check again. Didn't some people would take the queen? He checked again. Well, maybe Queen E8, and the game thus ended. So lots of action in that game. And I'll show you another short game from the Tuesday night marathon, which also had a lot of action. So, okay, this is White's is Michael Hilyard against Wade Robertson. And the game starts out a Dutch defense. When Mike plays bishop f4 in the spirit of a London system. But Wade develops with g6. This is the Leningrad Dutch system, and a little unusual setup for White. So Michael Hilyard develops. Bishop to g7. To bring your knight out, the pawn or something. But I really like what happened here. Michael goes h4. Wade plays the classical Leningrad move, d6. And of course, Michael goes h5. So he's just ready to sacrifice, you know. Knight takes the pawn, rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, check. You know, that's with an attack and having fun. Just ready to go for it. And that's actually quite dangerous. So Wade decides instead not to accept the offered sacrifice and castles. So if pawn to h6, the bishop just hides there on h8. Okay, Michael's pushed his rook pawn up so far, so he just opens the h file and hoping to get some attack down there.
When's G4 coming?
Okay, you can look for that plan. You can develop an attack. You can try to go for g4. I kind of like Mike's move, what he did here. He did bishop h6, getting rid of your best defender and that annoying bishop. So I think White's gotten some advantage from the opening here. So Wade, he maybe just thought, well, an attack on the flank needs to be met by an attack on the center, that old adage, and charged ahead in the center with pawn to e5, which was a mistake.
Why don't you just play DE initially, then bishop c4 check?
Okay, very good, and that's what happened. He did take, and Wade took back, which, well, you're kind of in trouble anyway, and then this bishop check is just, ouch. That's just really, really bad. You can't put the rook here because he takes the queen. So he moved the king up here. And, well, it's going badly.
Bishop G5 check?
It went bishop g5 check, very good. And that really should be the end of the game. I think you probably could give up. But nobody ever won by resigning. So Wade comes here. Okay, that's just a clear piece for White. But Michael doesn't do that. He doesn't just take that piece. He takes the queen, rook takes, and he doesn't take the bishop. He takes the knight. So this is a wonderful example of greed that works. I mean, you take a knight, the rook has to move, and then you go back and you win a second piece. And okay, the game went on a while, but 2 pieces up, there was never any doubt. So it was nice to see such aggressive play from Mike Hilyard. Don't know who's playing him tonight. But
Was the sharp of this bank before he got
some weeks people are just inspired. They just feel confident, they have energy, they make their moves and they feel they're the right ones. And then they're a very dangerous opponent. But I think now we'll go back to St. Louis a bit. Maybe a couple of endings here. There was Nepomniachtchi against Nakamura. This is the only game Nakamura has lost, and he was yeah, they're all around 2,800, you know. It's Nakamura. Nakamura is actually the lowest rated at 2,750 about, and Nepomniachtchi's 2,790 or something. Everybody in that tournament, they're in the top 12 in the world. So, but here is a bishop ending where, see, we have king on e6, bishop on b6, bishop on b2. See, if white exchanges the pawns, it's hard for the king to get over to this one pawn, and there's only 2 pawns left, and this will likely be a draw. On the other hand, if black would exchange these pawns, the white king gets up to a powerful square in the center, and you're able to move this pawn up, offer to trade the bishops, and start pushing this black king away. So, you know, it's got to defend the pawn and stop the white king from coming over. You can't do that. But the game is very close to being a draw or a win, and in the end, after moving the bishops around for about 15 moves or something, Nepomniachtchi couldn't make any progress, and he decided he had to try a plan. Bishop b4, bishop a7, bishop f6, bishop, so they here, offer to trade, go back, bishop e7, king e3. Nakamura checked him, and in order to make progress, he decided he had to push the pawn up to f4. Bishop e7, bishop b6, bishop a3, king d3, bishop attacks that pawn now on a dark square, bishop c7, bishop to b2. And he does a kind of tricky little move. He just goes one square. Doesn't seem like it does much. Bishop to b8, but the bishop comes back, and now Nepomniachtchi puts his king here, which all this subtlety, he's trying to push Nakamura back. Nakamura comes here. And if you take this pawn, it's a draw. But Nepomniachtchi found a way to win with white here.
King5 going to get one now? Is that? I think we're not much time. One king5 for white. Is that?
See, if you put your pawn on king5, he says, well, I'm happy. My king covers all these white squares. You can never get in. My bishop helping out too. You've got a protected passed pawn, but not going to help you out. he played bishop to e5.
Yeah, that, yeah.
I thought was a shocker.
He captured that there?
He,
Or he loses that pawn too?
he gives back his extra pawn. The problem is if you take it and take it, he takes, you have to take it, you're down to one pawn each, but this king just gets in the side. And do all of you know this is going to be a winning king and pawn ending?
Well, let's not lose the king up there. So, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, the king can't the king can't get in the way. And we're going to get the opposition when we need it. So I thought that was very nice technique by Nepomniachtchi. Actually, Nakamura didn't take the bishop, but that allowed when he...
Why is it a draw?
no, well, this is
A couple steps back, you have the original.
pawn. This, sorry, what?
So why doesn't the white pawn take the black pawn before the bishop moved there?
Why doesn't the white pawn take the black pawn?
The white bishop was on, yeah, why doesn't the white pawn take? Yeah.
If I take and the king takes, now I'm going to be able to make a draw. Well, if you move there now, I can trade and my king blocks yours out. And meanwhile, your king has to get by there without losing this pawn. If I get one pawn and you get that pawn, I can sacrifice my bishop for the last one. It's a little complicated. We're going to do another pawn ending, maybe a little similar with the squares, but this move was very nice because ending up that the white king dominates the black king after all of these pieces are liquidated. So Jackie, you'll excuse me for showing the finish of your game from last week, but I found it a very interesting ending. Okay. I've got a diagram here. Jackie. Yeah, I don't think we have time to get to Jerry's masterpiece, but if you look at it online, you know, that was a game just full of sacrifices, actions, and all sorts of things against John Chan, who also played very originally.
Hey, Nick, how about Jackie, how good girl game? Is she great?
What's that?
How's her game?
Well, she's played some marvelous games this tournament, and
Great.
yeah, when we...
I know that for sure. I get so surprised.
Okay, well, you have a fan here. That's... But this game, it's white to move. Pawns are even, a little like Nepomniachtchi and Nakamura, except here it's quite even. But black has this powerful passed pawn here. You might...
White to move here?
So you're white to move here. Yeah, now king to f2. Do I have the pawn? Oh, I'm sorry. It is actually this position. I'm sorry. That one right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. King to f2 here would allow the black king to dominate. If you can get such a powerful king, then you tie everything up. And then this pawn would push, and this king has to stop it. But just like the other game, that you can take Well, let's do this. Takes, takes. And once again, does everyone know this king is out of position so that we can get that
I like king.
that G pawn through?
I like it, it's not the best. King F.
But right here, you can make a draw with the white side. So if you'll just make a draw, let you play your games. Yeah, you've got to try it. G4. Now, if this pawn goes up, it looks threatening, but you're in the box. You're close enough to stop that pawn. If this king comes over, okay, give away a pawn, but your king gets in front of this one, you make a draw. So the question is, G4, what if the king comes here right away? Okay, yeah, you sort of, if you do this, you have to try F5. But I take it. If you go G5, I'm going to stop that pawn. Do you guys know about these distant pawns that you get close to this one and that one goes, the king can never approach? So this would be a lost position. Pawn takes pawn, king takes pawn. Looks scary. How could we draw this?
You have to get to B3 or D3, B3, yeah, B3, C3, D3 before black can do it.
So, okay, I've heard two suggestions. You're moving the king here. King F1 or King F2. Which, take a vote? Okay. King F1. It's anti-intuitive, but you keep the distant opposition. If this pawn comes up, well, that's easy. If the king comes in, you come in and get the opposition.
You're trying to stay in the same color square as your opponent's king, essentially.
Yes. So that when he comes, you come, and he comes here, you come there, and you're...
Same logic applied no matter how far the kings are separated across the whole board?
Often, yes, and especially in that Capablanca ending we looked at a couple weeks ago. Okay, good luck.
Great job.